High on Turkish cliffs, sculpted out of sheer rock walls that no one can ever hope to ascend, there rest tombs which have mystified discoverers for centuries. Smoothly sculptured, uncannily quiet, and apparently inaccessible, these ancient structures possess a mystery beyond anything else in existence. For decades, no one was able to comprehend the how or why of their construction. Now, finally, a breathtaking discovery has answered us, but it leaves more disturbing questions. What was the secret that these cliff tombs kept for so many years? If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel Spark Science, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. Southwest Turkey's Mediterranean coastline is usually marketed in tourist brochures using adjectives such as turquoise, sunny, and paradise. Between Fethi and Antalya, it is a mosaic of secluded bays, ancient harbors, and cliffs that drop into the sea. To the holiday tourist, it appears the ultimate holiday haven, sailing waters punctuated by gullets, coastal villages, and beaches that seemingly go on forever. But beneath this postcard facade exists one of the odder and most obscure civilizations in the history of humanity. This was Lycia. To the majority, the name is hardly known, a footnote to Greek myth or a little-known province engulfed by Rome. But the Lycians prospered for centuries, constructed rival cities, and left behind traces of a culture much more advanced than anyone might have predicted. Their remains are not under desert sand like Egypt, nor engulfed by jungle like the Maya. They are just there, half hidden on isolated hillsides or standing in quiet witness from cliffs that defy logic. When archaeologists first began to explore the Lycian coast in the 19th century, what they found was baffling. Whole cities were carved into mountainsides. Tombs resembling wooden houses and temples were cut high into sheer cliffs, often hundreds of feet above the ground. And these weren't isolated oddities, they appeared everywhere, in Xanthos, Pinera, Tlos, Myra, and dozens of other sites. Stranger still was that how invisible they appeared to history. Contrary to the monuments of Greece or Rome, Lycian ruins never became faded. They stood patiently for centuries, forgotten and overlooked. But they were not by any means unimportant. Homer attested to that in his Iliad, for they were fierce friends of Troy, fought under by the warrior Sarpedon. Famous in the Aegean for sea prowess and freedom, the Persians attempted to dominate them. Alexander the Great conquered in their territory, and Rome later incorporated them into its kingdom. But prior to all that, Lycia had already achieved something quite unprecedented, a confederation of city-states that did not have kings. The Lycian League weighed independence against unity, long before Athens was to try democracy and influence political minds from Rome on through the authors of the U.S. Constitution. But the marvels of today are the tombs, which rather than looking like graves appear to be functions as some sort of tall towers of memory. Some are modest and uncomplicated, hacked just above ground level, others, huge facades that make use of freestanding columns, pediments, and crude wooden-beamed imitation structures that vanished long ago. Tombs hacked so far into sheer cliffs that no remnants can be seen of ropes, scaffolding, or pathways to them. Even now, their positions baffle logic. Standing beneath them, you can't help but ask, how did the Lycians manage this? Why bury them where the living would never be able to go back? For most cultures, monuments were a display of power. Pharaohs constructed pyramids to proclaim divinity. Roman generals built mausoleums to transcend memory. But the Lycian tombs do not proclaim. They whisper. They seem intimate, even personal, as though each family hewn their own tale into stone, not to conquer the world, but to save remembrance. It is this unobtrusive rebellion, this insistence on not playing the game of empire, that renders Lycia so enigmatic. Today, even now, the Lycian coast resembles paradise. But if you look closely, paradise is lined with tombs, many, quiet, and unfathomable hoards, still guarding secrets inscribed upon stone a quarter of a millennium ago. And this is where the mystery starts, for those tombs don't simply inform us of who the Lycians were. They compel us to wonder how much of their tale has escaped through the cracks of history. When visitors stroll among Lycian ruins today, it isn't only the tombs and temples that hold one's attention, but the inscriptions carved into them. Cryptic letters, inscribed laboriously into rock, still adhere to the cliffs like frozen whispers. Nobody could decipher them for centuries. The alphabet seemed vaguely familiar, the shapes were reminiscent of Greek, but the words lacked meaning. The letters composed a cipher without a key, a language that had fallen between the cracks of memory. This was Lycian, one of the ancient world's great language mysteries. It differed from Greek, Latin, or even Hittite, however. Lycian never went far, and never produced libraries of writing. It lasted on tombstone epitaphs, civic ordinances, and boundary markers dotted about cliffsides. Centuries after civilization ended, no one understood what the inscriptions said. They were voices crying out through time, and no one heard. Scholars sought to decipher them for generations. Some believed Lycian was Greek. Others perceived links to Lycian, which was spoken inland. But all attempts to decipher stopped. There wasn't enough information. Without a bilingual inscription, a Rosetta Stone equivalent, Lycian was inaccessible. The breakthrough at Lycian, a sanctuary close to present-day Fethi, where archaeologists discovered a trilingual inscription. The text occurred in Lycian, Greek, and Aramaic. Finally, there was a key. Just as the Rosetta Stone broke open Egyptian hieroglyphs, so the Lycian stele broke open Lycian. Development was gradual and is still incomplete. Even today, scholars are not yet able to translate every word with absolute accuracy. But what has been deciphered is surprising. Lycian inscriptions are not royal or imperial pronouncements. They are profoundly personal, usually funerary documents that sound disarmingly up to date. One of them says, "Do not desecrate this tomb. I was loved, and now I lie." Another threatens trespassers with a curse, guaranteeing bad fortune to people who desecrate the tomb. These words are not ritual abstractions. Unlike any other ancient civilization, stone inscriptions in Lycia differentiated the closeness of being. To most of such ancient civilizations, stone inscriptions extolled kings, recited titles, or praised gods. Egyptian tombs itemized presents for all time. Roman epitaphs commemorated victories. The Lycians engraved in memory love and grief. A phrase intended not for posterity in the philosophical context but presumably for any time traveler that may stop a moment and read after everyone else has passed away. The very words themselves, however, eroded extremely quickly. By the late 4th century BCE, with Alexander the Great coming through, Greek had already started supplanting Lycian. One generation or two, and Lycian was utterly lost from sight. No dialects, no evolution, no progeny. Barren itself, it left behind only voiceless stones. Why this speed of vanishing? How can a culture with a mighty federation, an aristocratic pride, and prosperous cities simply annihilate its language? Greek, Latin, and Aramaic all survived in that area for centuries. Other scholars position Hellenistic assimilation as the Lycians' foil. Some ask whether the Lycians did not consciously let their language fall into barbarism and opted for integration rather than opposition. Now, there remain only remnants. Scholars must deduce names, geographical names, and overall schemes, but the actual thing remains for the most part a mystery. It is like they had half-created a puzzle, a half-seen puzzle never fully comprehended. Each additional finding recycled out of its ancient sense, another boundary stone exposed, and, perhaps, a tombstone inscription wrested by forceful removal from ivy just snowballs it all values higher on the forbidden tongue. Maybe this is why Lycian is all the more evocative. Its sentences are not of the grandeur of toppled mighty nations but of an individual and of their bittersweet goodbye. They are a reminder, tender as a leaf, that behind the federations and cliff-scorched monuments, there were individuals who loved, who were overwhelmed with loss, and who were kept safe from forgetfulness. And though their words are broken, they continue to speak across 2,500 years, reminding us that history is never silent as it appears. When most think of ancient politics, the mind immediately leaps to pharaohs, emperors, or kings, rulers who used divine right and asserted their power through armies. But in Lycia's rugged mountains and turquoise harbors, something entirely different was unfolding. Whereas other empires were fanatical about central power, the Lycians constructed something different altogether, a federation. An arrangement in which cities ruled themselves but came under a shared structure. The Lycian League was no loose collection. It was an organized political system that tied over 20 city-states together within one federation. Every city was independent but represented its members at an assembly. Votes were weighted. Large cities such as Xanthos and Patara had more weight, but small towns also had their say. Collective decisions were overseen by a chief magistrate, the Lyciarch. What is so impressive about this is not that it was there at all, but that it functioned.